You hire a subcontractor to help with a project. They deliver on time, the work looks great, everyone is happy. What nobody mentions is they upload your client files, their financial records, and the code into an AI tool to get it done. Where did the data go? What country does it get stored in? Who else can access it? You don't know because you've never asked. Stay tuned to find out why this is an issue. Welcome to Rise and Shine, your daily business tech boost with me, Charly Leetham. If you're a small business owner looking to simplify technology and get real, actionable advice from someone with 35 years of IT experience, you're in the right place. Every episode, I'll dive into tools and systems like email, CRM, marketing and tracking, and I'll break them down into bite-sized tips you can use straight away. Your time is valuable, so let's get straight to the point. It's time to work smarter, not harder. Rise and Shine, it's your business tech boost with me, Charly Leetham. Episode number 692. It is Firewall Friday, and we're going to be talking about what happens when subcontractors use AI tools on business data without telling anyone. If you have been listening to this show for any length of time, you already know what shadow IT is. That is where people inside or around a business start using technology that the business owner never approved and probably doesn't even know is being used. I've talked about it before. It's always been a risk. However, with AI, that risk is becoming larger. Before, it was mostly just random apps and cloud storage accounts. I mean, only just, it was mostly just. And they were all flying under the radar. Now, though, subcontractors are using tools like ChatGPT and Claude and a dozen others to do the work faster. It sounds great, right? Productivity is up, work is completed quickly, and everyone is happy. The issue with using AI tools like I've just mentioned and AI agents like Clawbot is that client files, financial records, potentially login credentials, strategy documents, and code are being fed straight into them. Most likely, nobody asked permission or disclosed it, and most business owners have absolutely no idea it's happening. Most subcontractors are likely on free or personal tier accounts for their AI tools. And that matters because depending on the platform, some free tiers do reserve the right to use input data for model training. It's right there in the terms of service that rarely anyone reads. Not all platforms are the same on this, but the point is that most people have no idea what the policy is for the tool they are using. As a result, clients' business data and information could end up being absorbed into a model that millions of people are querying every single day, and nobody on the business side ever gave permission for that to happen. There is a real difference between a subcontractor typing in a general question into an AI tool, like what's the best way to structure a project timeline, and a subcontractor uploading an actual client's spreadsheet and asking the tool to summarize it. One of those is using AI as a reference, and that's perfectly fine. The other is handing business data over to a third-party platform that nobody in the business agreed to and no client ever consented to. All right, I'm being very, very specific there. Maybe they do know what's happening and maybe they consented to it. Typically, though, it just happens and it happens quite quickly and no one really realizes it's going on. Now, most subcontractors don't even realize there's a line there, let alone that they're crossing it. Worse, some of that data includes credentials that can be used to identify and impersonate the client, including API keys for access to systems. This is a whole different level of problem. We've seen reports where data from OpenAI, the people who made ChatGPT, has been leaked in public already, and it's only going to get worse. Why is this your problem and not your subcontractor's problem, though? When a client hands over their information, they provide it to you, your business, under the terms and conditions they signed with You. The customer didn't give it to a subcontractor, and they may not, or maybe they did, authorize it being used with a third-party AI tool like OpenAI, Copilot, Gemini, or others. If the privacy and or security of that data ends up being breached or compromised, your client isn't going to go to your subcontractor to complain about it. They're going to come straight to you. Now, speaking to Australian law, because that's what I can speak to, I'm pretty certain this will have a similar thing in the US and something similar in Great Britain. Under the Australian Privacy Act, if a business is covered by the privacy principles, and most are, that business is responsible for taking reasonable steps to protect personal information. And that responsibility doesn't stop at the front door. It extends to every third party that touches that data. Saying, I didn't know my subcontractor was using AI or that specific AI tool is not a defense under the legislation. If anything, it's evidence that reasonable steps weren't taken. With the ongoing reforms to the Privacy Act, these obligations are only getting tighter as time goes by. So this isn't something that's going to quietly go away. What makes all of this significantly worse is the rise of agentic AI. Agentic AI. Agentic AI refers to tools that don't respond to prompts. They actually take actions autonomously. I've got to say that one slowly. These tools can browse the web, access files, send emails, execute code without waiting for permission, which means when a subcontractor uses an agentic tool on your data, it's not just the subcontractor interacting with the information anymore. The tool itself is making decisions about what to do with it, pulling in additional context from other sources, storing things in ways that nobody explicitly authorized, and making connections between data points that were never intended to be connected. None of this is happening on the subcontractor's machine either, and that's a really important point. That data is being sent to external servers for processing, so it's leaving the building entirely, and nobody in the business authorized that or probably even knows it's happening. The subcontractor probably doesn't even fully understand what the tool did behind the scenes, because that's the whole part of these automation systems. Now, in all fairness, subcontractors aren't doing this with any bad intentions. They're using tools to improve their productivity and expand their services. Look, I fall into that category. I use AI tools to make myself more productive, to be able to do more things, to be able to take a service I already offer and do more with that. The problem isn't malice. It's that what these tools actually do with the data and where they do it isn't all that obvious. Pair that with the fact that we really haven't had conversations like this one until fairly recently, and you can understand how this situation occurs. So what are we going to do about it, or what can we do about it as business owners? Well, before we engage anyone who's going to be touching our business's data, whether that's a subcontractor, a virtual assistant, or an external party, ask the question directly. What AI tools do you use in your workflow? It doesn't need to be confrontational. It's just a straightforward conversation about how the work gets done. If they say they don't use any AI tools, fantastic, but make sure that gets written in as part of the agreement. If they do use them, find out which ones they're using and what data they're putting into them. The next step is to add AI usage clauses, not clauses to your subcontractor contracts. This doesn't need to be complicated or necessarily drafted by a lawyer, although getting legal advice on it is never a bad idea. At a minimum, the contract should cover what tools are approved for use, what data may and may not be entered into the AI tools. A requirement that any AI tool used must have a no training policy when it comes to business data, and what the consequences are if there is a breach. If there's no written agreement with subcontractors at all right now, that's an actually bigger conversation that needs to happen. But adding AI clauses is a solid starting point. If a subcontractor is going to use AI tools on your work or on work for a client, it's important to understand what those specific tools do to the data that gets put into them. Not all platforms are the same. Some free tiers do train their input data, others don't. For example, Claude's free tier doesn't. Not by default, but that's not the case across the board. The point isn't to insist that every subcontractor pays for an enterprise account, because that's simply not realistic for most small business relationships. The point is to know what tool they're using and what the tool's actual policy is. Not what the marketing says, but what the terms of service actually state. If a subcontractor can't tell you what happens to the data they put into their AI tools, it's probably a red flag in itself. Apply the principle of least access to everything you share with subcontractors, which simply means don't hand over everything when they only need a piece of it. If someone is writing blog posts for the business, they don't need access to the client database. If someone is building a landing page, they don't need access to financial reports. The less data that gets shared, the less data is at risk if something goes sideways. And this has always been good practices regardless of AI. It just matters a lot more now that data can end up on external servers in unknown jurisdictions without anyone realizing. Finally, this isn't a one and done conversation. AI tools change their terms and services regularly. New tools appear every week, and a subcontractor who wasn't using AI 6 months ago might be using 3 different tools today. Make AI usage part of your regular check-in conversation with anyone who is handling your business data, not as policing or as micromanagement, but as a responsible business practice. The landscape is shifting fast, and the only way to stay across it is to keep talking about it and keep asking about it. Alrighty, guys, what did you think? Have I raised more questions than I answered with this one? I certainly hope so. It's how we learn and grow, and this is a really important topic, understanding what these tools are doing with your data and where it is doing it. Have you had these conversations with your subcontractors? How did it go? Have you, as a subcontractor, actually initiated the conversation with your prime contractor about what you're doing, how you're doing it? What worked for you? What didn't? I would love to know. So leave comments wherever you're watching or listening to these videos. If this episode was useful, I would really love a like. Guess that's the way you say it. Maybe you could also share this with a friend. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe button now and ring the bell so you find out when I drop more content. And of course, if you need help with any of this, I am here to help. If you haven't booked your free 30-minute breakthrough session, you can do that by visiting my website, askcharlyleetham.com, and clicking the button on the top right-hand corner of my site. If you've already booked your session and had it and you still need help, I am available to hire. So reach out and we will book a time. That is it for Friday. Have a fantastic weekend. I will see you on Monday for another Mindset Monday episode. Bye. Hey there, thanks so much for tuning in to Rise and Shine, your daily business tech boost. I hope today's episode gave you some actionable insights that will make your business tech work smarter for you. If you found value, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other small business owners who could use a daily boost. For more tips, tools, and resources, visit www.askcharlyleetham.com. Until next time, keep rising, keep shining, and let's make tech simple together.